Hello everyone, Brendan here. Today I will be giving you guys another update on my own editing style and showing you guys a couple photos from sets that I haven't actually released yet. So you guys will get a sneak peek of those. So let's go ahead and get started. You've probably already noticed that this photo of this Ferrari 458 is a little bit different than my usual work. In terms of editing, composition's pretty similar. But today I'm going to show you guys what I did to make this photo different. If you haven't seen my first editing tutorial, you'd probably want to watch that one first so you guys will be able to see the similarities and differences. But yeah, so this is the faded shadow effect. That's what I'll call it. I'm not sure what the real name for it is. But basically, as the name would imply, the shadows have a nice fade to them. So in this, I guess this is the grill. You can see that there's a loss of definition, and in the ground, same thing, especially on the tires as well, actually. And we're doing that without cranking the contrast. And we actually do this in the tone curve. So I'll just walk you guys through how to do it. So let me go ahead and duplicate this photo, create virtual copy, so I don't lose the progress on the one that I've already been working on. I will reset this one. And there we go. So as always, first just touch up the composition. I guess you don't have to do it first, but this is pretty basic, just whatever looks good. I guess I could do this just one better. White balance tool. That's probably good. Yeah, I'm just correcting the white balance. This was all covered in previous videos, so if you'd like more information on that, you can just watch those. All right, so this was actually a single exposure, even though I have the starburst headlight effect. As you can see, f22, 0.4 seconds. Obviously, it had to be taken on a tripod. I think it's still ISO 100. Yeah, ISO 100. So I am actually going to start by raising the shadows a little bit. Let me turn up my brightness. Oh, it was all the way up. Yeah, so I'm gonna start by raising up the shadows. There we go. And then for now, I'm gonna ever so slightly drop the exposure and the highlights. Just to there for now. Increase the clarity a little bit, but I'm not gonna go too crazy with it. And I'd say that's a pretty solid starting point. So now let's do a gradient filter over the sky. Darken a little bit. Now let me also mention that when you're composing your photos, if you can have the roof of the car very close to the horizon, if not actually a little bit below, you can see I didn't really do it too well in this photo, but in some of the other ones I was able to do that. It'll make editing a little bit easier in some cases, so something to go for. So yeah, gradient filter there. And then another thing I like to do is another smaller gradient filter up at the top. This one's just gonna be super slight, just very subtle exposure decrease. For now, I'd say that looks about solid. Another one at the bottom of the image, decrease a little bit. And now that probably 75% of the frame is covered with these gradient filters that are decreasing the exposure, we can actually increase the exposure in the photo a little bit. All right, so let's go into the HSLs just to address the red. So if we zoom in really close, let's see, we can see a little bit of pink or magenta here, or sorry, purple or magenta here. So let's go into the hue, and we will push that, I think it's the magenta. We'll push it to red, or this way on the hue slider. I'll just move it all the way around so you guys can see what it's doing. So that's a little bit better. Let's go into luminance. It's a red car, so I'll bump the red a little bit. There we go. And I'll move it all the way around so you guys can see what it does. I'll leave it about right there. And in saturation, we will actually crank the red saturation quite a bit. That's about good for now. So now I'm actually not going to go into the split toning for this photo. Instead, let's get into the curves. So if you just open Lightroom, or I guess this might depend on your workspace configuration, this is what you'd see. Now, I actually prefer not to use this one. I don't even really understand it. But if you click this little box down here, you go to this tone curve, which is what I prefer. So basically, to get the faded shadow effect, what we're going to do is choose a point very, very low on the curve, or it's a line now, but it's going to become a curve, and we're going to make an anchor point just by clicking. So that anchor point is right there. I usually like to make it about 3/4 of the way up through this box on the diagonal. I think that's a good place to start. Now, if we grab the absolute base of the curve, which, yep, I have done, and we actually move directly up this line, we can fade our shadows depending on how much you want. So if I were to do it like really extreme, it would be like this, which is a little bit too much for me. And of course, this is what it would look like. So I'll leave it about right there. That's a little bit more than I would go with, but for the sake of the tutorial, I'll just leave it right there. And all right. So now to give it a little bit of personality, I'm going to go ahead and boost the blue in the shadows a little bit, ever so slightly, not a whole lot. Drop it in the highlights, as I've just done. And then in the reds, we are going to do the exact opposite. So raise it in the highlights, drop it in the shadows. That's kind of like a fine line here because you don't want to go too crazy with it, but you also want it to be a little bit noticeable, like even that's a little bit too much. I'll leave it right there for now, but you guys can see the general idea. Yeah, so now that that's taken care of, we can go back here and make very slight adjustments as we see needed. Let's see. Back off on the shadows a tiny bit. Could actually use a tiny bit more clarity because we haven't gone over the top yet. And then I will actually go into this gradient filter for the sky and warm it up a bit. And I think that the tint has still been preserved even though we made that change. Exposure-wise, I'll drop it a little bit. Still. And yeah, I'd say that's about perfect. So yeah, this is what I've been doing recently on my photos. So you will probably see a lot of photos on Instagram with this style. And before the video is over, actually, I'll just show you guys a few more. Here's another one. Same set, another one. I didn't like this composition as much as this one, so you guys will probably never see this one again. Did some detail shots, which honestly I'm not very good at. I need some more practice with that. And then I did some exposure blending. These are not done yet at all, so they might look a little bit different when you see them, but this one was a composite of 3 images, I believe. This, no, just 2 images, this and this. And yeah, I took another one to get the headlights on and actually used the background from that one as well, I believe. Applied the same faded shadow effect, and I'll just like give you guys a glimpse of what I did. Same thing with the red and blue. A little bit different of a process in the HSLs just because the long exposure kind of light painted shots always pick up different colors. Didn't touch the split toning at all, even though I could have and probably will before the photo's done. Didn't use the dehaze, didn't use grain, didn't use anything like that. But yeah, here's what it looks like. Here's another one, also not done yet. Was kind of going for a day and night effect here. As you can see, it's like part of the photo is really bright and it looks like it was taken during the day, but some of it is more golden, kind of like golden hour sunset, and then part of it is like a complete night photo, almost like a light painting that you've probably seen on my page. So compositing this in Photoshop was pretty tricky, and it's not even close to being done yet, but I'm really excited to see where I can go with this. So that's it for today. Please let me know what you thought about the photos and the video, and let me know if you found it helpful. And as always, you can comment what other types of tutorials you'd like to see, and I'll film them and upload them to YouTube as always.